3.1 is all about quadratics specifically, okay? So, remember, just to make sure we're all on the same page, quadratics means the leading term has a degree of 2. Copy down this little section of fill in the blanks. Okay, again, all of this should be a review from Algebra 2. The first part of today's is going to seem pretty easy. Don't tap out, okay? We're just making sure we remember all of these key pieces. My goal is by the end of this, you should feel real confident on this stuff. So even though it's a Monday test, you're going to be okay. Okay? We're actually taking notes today, yes. I also kind of emphasized a couple things down in the pictures. That dotted line in the middle is my axis of symmetry. That coefficient A is just a fancy way of talking about what we already know, right? If it has a positive on the outside, it's open up. If it has a negative on the front with my x squared, it's flipped upside down. Okay, we talked about that with our test too, right? Negative is a reflection. We flip it. Okay? All right. When you're done, flip your paper so I know I can move on. It's a lot quieter without the fan. I know. I don't know that I like it. Yeah, I need some carpet in here.
Wait, what? Why did you change the fan?
Because it was too cold in here all the time. So we're gonna try this out. It might get warm, and then we can put the fan back on. All right. Next little bit here, just minimum and max. Again, we've talked about this. You know this. We've been talking about this since your Algebra 2 days. I know, they're all blurry. If you want, you can relabel them. Can you see it better on mine up there? Yeah, just relabel it. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. All right, so again, minimum, maximum. Again, makes sense, right? If it's opening up, the lowest point's going to be a minimum. All right? Nothing new. Down here is a review of our transformations of a stretch or a shrink. Okay, again, you don't have to write anything here, but let's just make sure we understand what's happening. Okay, here is my original in the yellow. When I shrink or compress it, I have a fraction on the outside. It makes it wider. Okay. The bottom one is a stretch. Here's my original one. When I have a coefficient that's greater than 1, it stretches it up. Okay, kind of makes it thinner or skinnier. Okay. All right, any questions on all of that so far? So most of that should have been a review. Okay. All right. Moving along. Now, I recognize this is a lot of writing. So I'm going to give you 3 choices. One, you can take a picture of it. Don't take a picture of it yet. Wait till I'm out of the screen, please. Okay? Or some people like the reading portion. So this and this, what I have separated by my squiggly line, is saying the same things. If you're someone who just likes to write the words and you understand that better, copy down the paragraph. If you're more of a visual person, you like seeing the graph and what it's talking about, I drew some pictures to say what the exact paragraph is talking about. Okay? So I'm going to stop talking for a little bit, but you can kind of choose how you want to write all this stuff down. All of this is talking about standard and vertex form, and I'll go into that in a minute after I let you guys write. If you are writing, can you just put your pencil down when you're done so that I know? Tessa, know that if you go back and look at the notes key, she does not have the pictures. Oh, you got it. Okay. I was gonna say. Yeah.
What is the picture? It represents the whole paragraph?
Yeah, so I'm basically showing you that this is our vertex, like I say up here. Our vertex is this point. I'm just labeling that. I'm labeling our axis of symmetry.
Okay.
And then I'm showing you that A is positive, so it's open up. A is negative, so it's open down. Okay? All of that is set up here.
So I'm gonna go back in the notes and
Yep.
do that when I get home.
Yep, you can do that. And you got a picture? Yeah. All right. I'm going to start talking. If you're still writing, that's okay. This part is kind of important because it's kind of weird. If you do the homework, I know not many of you do, but those of you who do the homework, okay? I don't know why our textbook says standard form in it. They're talking about vertex form. So the textbook is going to be confusing. If you do the homework tonight and it says give the standard form, it's actually talking about vertex form. Okay, so in our room, we've always said standard form is this equation. So I'm going to leave it that way. Okay, and then vertex form is going to be the new form that we really focus on today. But in the homework, it calls vertex form standard form. Okay, so just be careful with that. Don't get confused. Your textbook calls it something different than what we're going to call it in here. Okay? All right. So again, all of this was just reviewing what we just copied down on the last 2 pages. Any questions looking at my pictures or understanding what I wrote? We're okay. We all get it. Okay. All right, so now we're going to do an example. Okay, it says sketch a graph, and then it says identify the vertex and axis of a parabola. Cross this off. The notes key, if you go back and look at the notes key in our Schoology page, it's going to give you a different way of solving this that is really hard. Don't do this way. I'm going to do a different way. Okay, I'm going to teach you a slightly easier way to do it. So cross that out. We're not doing that. Okay?
Wait, so all this we won't have to do on the test?
Nope, you won't have to do any of that on the test. I'm going to teach you a different way. Okay? All right. So first, I give you the standard form of our equation. Okay? To make a sketch, we need to find a really key point, which is our vertex. Okay? Does anyone remember the formula for finding the x-coordinate of a vertex? We did it already this year. It was a fraction. Negative b. Yeah, over 2a. Okay. All right, you guys need to stop talking. Okay. All right, so here's my formula for a vertex, the x-coordinate. Okay, I'm not going to give you this on a test. We need to know this. So, this vertex formula is used when we're in standard form. Okay? So let's just find the x-coordinate of this one. So negative b would be negative 8 over 2 times 2. So I have negative b over 4, which simplifies to negative 2. Okay, we've done this before. So that's my x-coordinate. How do I find my y? How do I find my y now? Yeah, plug it back in. So plug my x value. We're going to plug it in to f of x. Okay. So I'm going to do it pretty quick here. Okay, so we're just plugging in our x value now. So we'll simplify this. This becomes a 4 minus 16 minus 14. Did I write something wrong?
Do we need the negative 2 at the side?
Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, I don't need the negative 2 there. I'm working too fast. So we should get negative 1. Okay? All right, so that's the y value of our point. So let's put this all together now. My vertex is negative 2, negative 1. Okay, so that's the first thing they're asking us in the problem, and it's what we need to graph our sketch. Okay. All right. Now that we have the vertex, it also says to identify the axis of the parabola. Eventually, you'll probably be able to figure out the axis at this point, but let's sketch it first, and then we'll be able to determine our graph here. So here's our graph. Okay. We're going to kind of start graphing it, and then we're going to stop. All right, so we know I have a vertex at -2, -1. So -2, -1. I know my vertex is there. Okay. Okay, now our directions did not tell us to do this, but we're going to put this in vertex form now because that's what we're really focusing on today. Okay, so vertex form, if we remember our formula, I'm just going to write it down here again. You have it at the top of your paper, but so that I don't have to zoom in. Okay, there's our vertex formula again. Okay. If you remember correctly, our vertex formula, the reason it's called vertex formula is because it gives me the vertex in there. That HK refers to my formula up at the top. Okay? That HK refers to my vertex at the top. Okay? So let's just fill in what we know. We don't have X. Now it's in -H, but I have a -H value. So that's going to turn into a +2. And then my K was a -1. So it's going to stay -1. So it's going to be -1. Okay, so all we're doing is we're plugging our vertex into our vertex formula. Okay, and do we see how the signs flip-flop? That's the biggest mistake I see is kids will not change our signs if we have the negatives. Okay, now our A value. Now what's nice about this one is someone already found our A value. It's given to us in vertex in standard form. Okay, so my A value was a 2. So I'm just going to make this a 2. You can write underneath if you can't erase it. Okay? But that is my vertex form. Okay? So that equation that we just found in this equation is the same exact line. Standard form, vertex form. Okay? So now let's go back to my sketch. I have my vertex. How do I know if it's open, up, or down again? What do I look at? The A value, right? The coefficient. So here's my A value. It's positive, which tells me what? Is it opening up or down? Up. Boom. I don't even need to find other points because it's a sketch. Okay? All right, last but not least, let's talk about axis of symmetry. So axis of symmetry, we've talked about reflections over X, Y, and the origin. Okay, now we're going to talk about axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is that imaginary line that if I fold my graph across this line like this, it's going to be on top of each other. Okay, that's what that means. Okay, it's always through your vertex. Always through your vertex for a quadratic. Okay. Now, when we identify the axis of symmetry, we've got to give an equation. So I like to label it AOS, okay, axis of symmetry. If this was a line, I'll actually draw it a line now. What would the equation of that line be? That vertical line, what would that equation be? It's a weird one. Okay, what number? What do we go through? Not -1. -2. Now, I'm going to correct one thing. Okay? This is y equals -2. So it would be x. Okay? So your axis of symmetry is always x equals, and then the x coordinate of your vertex. Okay? The biggest thing, though, is don't just write -2. That's not a line. Okay, we have to have x equals. Okay? Any initial questions on this one? We're going to do a bunch of these problems today. All right. Let's look at number 2 here. Okay. Same idea. We're sketching a parabola. Okay. Identify the vertex, axis of symmetry. What it doesn't tell you to do is write the vertex form. We're going to do that to get that practice. Okay. All right. So we'll do this one together. First things first, you always start with your vertex. Let's write some steps out for this one. This might be helpful. Start with your vertex. Negative b over 2a. So I've got negative 2 over 2 times 1, because that invisible 1 out front. Negative 2 over 2 gives me negative 1. Okay? Now that's just the x-coordinate. I think it was Patrick last time told us we're going to plug it in now to find the y. So I'm going to plug it in. Okay. Okay, so my vertex will be negative 1, 0. Any questions on how I find vertex? Start with your x, with my formula, negative b over 2a. Then plug what you find back into my equation. All right, once we find vertex, let's go straight into our vertex form now. Okay? Vertex form, which we know is a times x minus h squared plus k. Okay. All right, so now let's just plug our values in. So here, remember, we just have to remember that h comes first. Easy way to remember that, h comes before k in the alphabet. It's in alphabetical order, okay? h, k. All right, so when I go to plug this in, I'm plugging in a negative 1 in that h spot, okay? Now I'm going to simplify this because I plugged in that negative 1, but minus a negative I know turns into a plus. Okay, so that's why my sign switches when I have a negative. Let's bring down the 2, the a. Now I'm going to write in our plus 0, okay, but you don't have to. I'm just going to write it in there so we can see all of our pieces. And last but not least, let's fill in our a. Our a value, remember, is the same from the beginning. So it'd be a 1. Oh, I don't want pink. Okay, and this would be my equation. You could totally write it without this 1 and without the 0 if you wanted. Okay, it would mean the same thing. Oh, I've got my little square. Okay. Any questions on writing vertex form? All right, let's graph it. Last little bit here. Here's my little sketch. My vertex, negative 1, 0. So I plot my point there. Is this open up or down? Down. Oh, nope, not down. Which one? Up. It's positive. I think you were looking at the negative x in the vertex. Open up. Okay. Last thing, don't forget your axis of symmetry. Okay, axis of parabola. Here it is. Axis of symmetry. What is my axis of symmetry here? Beautiful. Way to correct yourself there, not the x equals. That was awesome. Okay, so make sure on your test in a couple of days here, I'm looking for this, this, and this. So 4 things. So you've got the potential to get 4 points for each of these questions. Okay? So even if you miss something, right? If you get the vertex right, you're guaranteed that point. If you plug it in wrong, you'll miss a point there, but at least you got the vertex right. Okay? All right, look at number 3. I want you to start this one. Notice I'm asking you for the x-intercepts. We're going to do that part together. So just find my vertex. You can sketch it, I guess, if you want. You're able to do that now. Okay? Do that whole thing. We'll do the last little bit together, but start it on your own.
I got my boy Lee. Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
Do we have to write the new equation like this one?
So I didn't tell you up here, but I'm adding it to our directions.
Okay.
So yes, please do it. Because on the test, I'll ask you to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Alright, so whenever I get to this, like the next form stuff.
Yeah.
Like what is K mean?
So K, I'm going to go back. So which one did you prefer, the paragraph or the pictures?
I don't know, I just kind of wrote it all down.
Okay, I'm going to use a picture. Okay. So first of all, do I have a positive or negative A value?
Negative.
Okay, so do I know it's going to be open up or down?
It's gonna open down.
Perfect. So I'm on this one. See how I've highlighted the H and the K here?
Yeah.
So in our formula, what's inside is the X value of our vertex.
Okay, so 1 will be on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So
And the K is what's on the outside, or the Y value. Perfect. Okay.
134.
Now, what is K? What is the X value?
X value.
I'm not the X value. What is the Y value?
0.
Okay,
So
vertex.
plus 0.
Yeah, plus 0.
Is A just the first one?
Yep. So it's the same one that was up here. Nope, in that equation. Like, what's the A value in this equation? -1. So it's -1 down here too. What'd you ask?
How am I looking?
Looks pretty good.
Dude, I wish my tower sense.
Wait, is it automatically 0?
Nope.
Okay.
So I think. No. So you got 3 for your X. That's your X for your
I know, it's
vertex.
actually hog right?
And then you got 1. Yeah, 3 1s. Make that 3 1s. So you only have to change the 2 numbers in your equation.
Oh, wait, does this negative automatically?
Hi, sir. Yes.
So what would I forgot what would be H?
H is
I got a 1.
right here.
I got a 1. No.
It's this one, which is our H X value in our vertex. So where's your? Let's write our vertex as a point.
Okay. So what?
So you found the X value. Okay, let me go back to our equation up here. So you found this one right here.
Like I found the. What do you like the 0?
You found this one
Okay.
right here.
Yeah.
That became our H in our vertex, or our X coordinate.
So this is my. H.
Yeah, that's your H.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then your K, we got that from plugging it in down here. So take your X value, plug it in. What'd you get?
19.
Oh, this should have been a negative.
Oh.
Yeah, we had a negative down here.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that's your K. Yeah.
So I just do the red like up here.
Just like that. All right, I've got my equation and my vertex on the board. You okay? Okay, now this last part, I didn't sketch my graph for a reason yet. Okay, it's okay if you did. We'll just add one thing to our sketch. Okay, I want to talk about this last little bit, x-intercepts. Okay, can I determine my x-intercepts from my vertex form? Are they a number in my problem? No. Okay. What's happening when I have an x-intercept though? What's happening? What's my y value? When I cross this, it's going to look like this somehow. What's happening where it crosses? What's the y value here? Both of these points. If this was a point, we'd have number, comma, what? I think some of you are thinking it, you're just not saying it. Where am I? Right here. What's my y value? 0. Okay? So to find our x-intercepts, we're going to replace f of x with a 0. Okay? Yes, it says find the x-intercepts. That I told you guys to start it, and then we're going to do the last part together. Okay? So we're just plugging in 0. Now, to be totally transparent, you could put a 0 here, or you can come back up to the original problem if you prefer to plug in a 0 up here. Okay? We're gonna finish it this way, and then I'll show you what would happen if we plugged in the other one. Okay? So now we're solving for x. This was like way back, a couple months. Okay, we're gonna start by subtracting 1. So I have -1 equals -1, x minus 3 squared. Again, I'm trying to get x by itself. That's my goal. Okay. So I'm going to move my -1 on the outside by dividing because it's attached by multiplication. -1 divided by -1 gives me a 1 equals, I've got x minus 3 squared. How do I get rid of that little square? Yep, square root. Oh, both sides. Now we're solving. So when we take the square root of 1, we have to consider, so square root of 1 is 1, but we have to consider that it's positive or -1 because we're solving. Equals x minus 3. And now I got to split it into my two problems. Okay, so I'm adding 3 to both sides to get my x by itself. One time, I'm going to use my +1. The second time, I have my -1. Okay? That's what happens here. +1, -1. Splitting it into my two different numbers. So x can be 4, or x can be 2. Which makes sense, right? If I have a parabola, it's going to cross my axis in 2 spots. So I better have 2 numbers for my x-intercepts. Okay? So why do we find these? To make our sketch more accurate. Okay? So if you already did your sketch, that's totally fine. You don't have to erase anything. Okay? My vertex was at, where do we write it? 3, 1. So up 3 over 1. But now I know my x-intercepts. I have an x-intercept at 2, an x-intercept at 4. So now I should have 3 points on my sketch. Okay? So if you already sketched it in, maybe just add those points. Okay? All right, any questions on these? Perfect. All right, number 4. Write the standard form, but remember, standard form our textbook doesn't use. We're going to actually write vertex form of the equation of the parabola, whose vertex is 1, 2, and that passes through the point 3, negative 6. Uh-oh, problem. I don't have an equation like I had before. Okay? So we have to solve this one a little differently. Okay, the nice part is up top here. We said the first step was to find the vertex, and they give us that already. So let's just label it. So we have our vertex, which is 1, 2. When in doubt, start with your vertex. You either have to find it or it's given to you. Okay, one of the two. But we know the vertex. If we know the vertex, we can start plugging it into our vertex form. Okay? So we've got our, I'm going to write our formula down again. All right, so because we know our vertex, we can already plug 2 numbers into our formula. I know I've got a 1 and a 2. Okay. Okay. So this part in this problem is actually easier because we didn't have to find vertex. But this is where it makes up for it. Because I don't have an A value up here in my problem like I did before. I have to find it. Okay, so this is where our work comes into play. What's the other piece of information they give us in this problem? What else do they tell us? Yeah, they give us a y and x value. They give us another point. It's not the vertex, but they give us another point. Okay? And you're exactly right to say it's a x and a y. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those values and we're going to plug them in. You agree with me? F of x is the same as y. Yep. So let's plug in negative 6 and a 3. Okay? So all we're doing is we're just plugging in the values of that second point. And now we're just going to solve for A. Okay? And that sounds way harder than it actually is. Okay? 3 minus 1 gives me 2. Bring everything else down. So we have 4A, which equals negative 6. Minus 2 both sides. I should stay in order. So I have negative 8 equals 4A. So A equals negative 2. Okay? So it's actually way easier to solve for A just because we don't have a variable inside our parentheses. So it simplifies real easily. Any questions on solving for A? Once we have A, we just go back up and we're going to plug it back in to our formula where we had that A. Okay, so we had f of x equals negative 2 x minus 1 squared plus 2. Okay, that's our vertex form. Let's graph it. Okay. Graphing a sketch. So, bless you. I know my vertex is at 1, 2. Is this going to be open up or down? Down. Perfect. Okay. And I don't even ask you for the axis of symmetry here. But what would it be? What would we say? Not just 1. X equals 1. Perfect. Okay. All right. So just to zoom out real quick. So you're doing the same thing in every single problem. You're finding my vertex form, you're sketching a graph. Okay? This form, you had to find vertex first, then plug it in. Okay? And we had our A value from our equation. This one, I gave you the vertex, but I did not give you A. You had to use your other point, plug it in to find A. Okay, so those are the two big differences here. This one, you had to find your x-intercepts. Okay? So the same process, I should say it, not the same process, slightly different process, but the same end product, right? All right. Try this one on your own. Number 5, just like the one we just did. Okay, I give you 2 points. Write my vertex form. Okay? And we'll just do that. Don't worry about graphing it. We'll just find our vertex form here. I'll leave up my work from the last one. So if you get stuck, here's the work that we just did, color coded. So if you need to refer to that, you can. Okay, so what other information do I give you? Yeah, good. Yeah, that looks great. Good job. All right. So here's over here, I'll box it in. You could have written 2 things. Okay, because our A value was a 1, so you could have written the 1 in there, or you could have left it out because we know anything times 1 is itself. Walking around, this looked pretty good. Any questions? Anyone unsure where I got something or what happened at a certain point? All right, we're almost done, okay? This next part, again, feel free to take a picture or copy it down. We've already talked about this, okay? Minimum, maximum, all this is saying is that if we are solving a problem to find min or max, you can find it at your vertex. If it's a coefficient that's positive, then it's a minimum. If it's a coefficient that's negative, it's a maximum, okay? That last little star bit is helpful if you get stuck on how to find vertex. Okay, that's kind of like how we solve it. It gives you the formula for x, and then it shows you that we plug that number in to our equation to find our y value. And we're going to end with one last word problem. It's actually not that bad. I think you'll be fine. You've done way harder. Remember those mixture problems that you all hated?
Yeah, my son's a soccer. And he learns on, but I can't wait to prove you wrong. Yeah, that's answer. Yeah, I'll have it to prove you wrong.
Okay. Let's look at number 1 down here. Okay, last problem. Again, it's going to sound way more complicated than it actually is. It says a baseball is hit at a point 3 feet above the ground at a velocity of 100 feet per second and at an angle of 45 degrees with respect to the ground. The path of the baseball is given by the function f of x, where f of x is the height of the baseball in feet and x is the horizontal distance from home plate in feet. What is the maximum height reached by the baseball? All right, just for clarification reading-wise, this whole first section right here, finish highlighting, it's pretty long, is basically irrelevant. Why? Because they give you this, and that's all you need to know. Okay, so don't let all those words and numbers throw you off. If you see an equation, that's all you need. Okay? All right, so here we have a function. I see it's a parabola. Is it going to be open, up, or down? Open, up, or down? What do we think? Down. What makes you say that? Yeah, the negative a. So we know that it's down. Also, if you just think about this problem, it makes sense. You throw or you hit a baseball, it's going to make that downward curve, right, as it flies through the air. Okay, so here's my baseball. This is where it's flying. Here's where I hit the baseball. It's flying over there. Okay? Now, I'm asking you, what is the maximum height reached by the baseball? Okay? Now, we know that it's a downward-facing parabola. So where is that maximum height going to be on my graph? At what point? What am I looking for? Yeah, the top, or what do we call that point? The vertex, okay? So we're looking for the vertex. This is secretly asking you to find the vertex. Now, I'm not going to give my answer as a vertex. What part of my vertex am I asking you to give me? The H or the K, or the X or the Y value of my vertex? Which one?
Why?
Oh. Okay, why are we thinking Y?
Because it's up.
Yeah, because it's height. Look back at my problem. When in doubt, look up. Okay, look at my problem. Where f of x is the height of the baseball. What am I asking for? The height. Okay, so I'm looking for my f of x, or my y. Okay? That's what my final answer is going to be. All right, so let's find vertex. Vertex, remember, is negative b over 2a. So I have negative 1 over 2 times negative 0.0032. Okay? Just going to do this for you. We've got negative 1. This would become a negative 0.0064. Which simplifies, and we round it, 156.25. Okay? That's what you'd get if you did that in your calculator. Now, this 156.25, that's my x value. That's what? What am I talking about when I say 156.25 in units? What is that? Yeah, the horizontal distance. Actually, yeah, in feet. Yep, perfect. We'll take that. Yeah. So that's where it is horizontally, right? So it's 156.25. Okay, that's its horizontal distance. I want the max height, though. Okay, so we just got to plug my horizontal distance, or my x value, back into my original problem. I need more space than that. Okay, we just plug it back into my problem. And then you would just type this into your calculator, just as is, nothing fancy. And we would get 81.125 as our answer. Any questions on how I solved this one? We're not totally done because it's a word problem. So what do I need to do, mathematicians? Write a sentence. Why didn't you say it with so much more joy, Calvin? Come on now. The max height reached by the baseball is 81.125 feet. Okay? Perfect.